we in the last class we discussed about dynamic sales, and I took you guys through the sales business process flow, right? And we talked about creating of leads, opportunities, quotes, orders, and the processing which a salesperson goes in filling all the orders raised by the customers, right? We talked about all the processes that are involved in the business sales business process flow, and sure, here we're just going to go straight to our next course, which is talking about the Dynamics 365 customer service. Today, we're going to be talking about how basic this operation goes. And in here, the objectives of this class is we're going to explain the case life cycle. And also, we're going to be able to describe the case management process in Dynamics 365 customer service. Talk about 365 for customer service. Also, we're going to mention, we're going to describe the and this level agreement. I'm quite sure we are all familiar with each of these terms, but we're going to bring it down into how this applies to us in Dynamics 365 for customer service. Okay, so basically, the way a customer service operation goes, in which the customers are the ones making use of the product, and definitely there will be times whereby they would have to log issues, regarding a process, an action, a product, or whatever issue that might arise. Okay, and this is when it requires them to create a case. Now, creating a case can be done in two ways, which is probably manually or automatically. And without wasting much time, today we're going to be doing a lot of practical sessions. And just while I explain this, we're going to be seeing how we can also create the cases. So briefly, just guys, I'm going to take you to this session where we're talking about this is the customer service hub, right? And here you can see we are currently on the service area of the site map. And if you just take a look down here, when you load the customer service hub, you can see the first thing that shows up is the dashboard, and gives you a graphical representation of what this particular agent, the sign-in user, the customer service rep, has been up to. You can talk about, the blank areas, the emails, the phone calls, the web cases, right? And also you talk about your active cases depending on the tiles you've, created on this particular dashboard. We actually have quite a number of dashboards here. We have the dashboard for the customer service manager, the operations, the performance, and each of these guys here. But we're just going to stay here on the customer service dashboard, right? The customer service rep dashboard. Okay. All right. So like I mentioned earlier, in creating cases, it has to be done in two ways, either manually or automatically. Now let's talk about the manual creation. The manual creation is just similar to when if the common one that we're probably used to is when you walk into a bank and say you have an issue with a reversal of some money you transferred, right? And you walk out to the customer service, there's usually this point where they have the customer service agent, and you're like, oh, this is my issue. So literally what happens, in order to resolve that issue, is that that particular representative takes down your details, the issue description, and everything, and logs a ticket on your behalf. And what is that doing? That is the manual creation of cases. And how do we do that? You just have to come here to the service area, right? Once you click on the cases here, it shows you a view. Like I mentioned in the last class, this is a personal view, but we have some system views here as well. You can see here, like a system view. We talked about the active cases depending on what the logged in user, which is the customer service rep here. So how do you create a manual case, right? You can just click on new case, and it opens up a form for you. And what you just need to do on this form is to fill the details depending on what the user or the user complaining has given you. Now, here is the case title. Let's just say incomplete product or incomplete delivery. Okay. So that is the complaint that the customer has given you. Now, next thing you have to do, like I mentioned in the last class, yeah, where you have the red dot, these are what compulsory fields that must have value for this form to be saved. Just like it is now, let's say we have this field that is not saved. If you try to click on save, there's going to give you a button here, an error here saying this field is still empty. All right. So we can just quickly look up, right? This customer field is actually partly, it looks up into both account and contact as well. So you can either select the contact or an account. So for a test, I'm just going to select this particular contact, all right? And give it a description like customer say reported that the delivery made to them was not complete on the 15th of August. All right. Say this is the report given by the customer. So you can just simply hit on save here or the control S, it will save the form. And hula, the case is created. Okay. You can see we have the case title here. All right, and it is already created. And if you would understand here, what has happened here is that the case, when you have manual creation, the case is automatically sent to the user that created it. And that's one thing about manual creation. If you want this assigned to someone else, what is going to happen is you would have to manually route that case out of the current user queue as well. So this is how you create a case. This is a manual creation of case. The second one, which we mentioned earlier, is the automatic way. Now, it's not all users, like the scenario I painted earlier, it's not all users that will definitely come to the bank to say, oh, I have an issue with a failed transaction or an incomplete transaction. You know, some of them might just send an email or some of them might call the customer service line. Now, when they do that, there is an automated process that goes behind the scene that does the creation of the case. Okay, so this talks about, that is where we have the automatic record creation coming. You know what I just did here? You know, initially we were on the service area of the sitemap, but now I have just switched to service management. If you switch to service management, you have all of these on your sitemap. And over here, we have the record, automatic record creation and update rules. Here is where you create the record creation rules that you want. All right, so I'm just going to run through this. If you click on the automatic record creation, you could definitely define some actions, right? And you could define some set of conditions where the user can come in, and once the user performs that action, it just runs into a process. Okay, so let's say we have a support queue, say aditayo at support.com. All right, and anytime a user sends an email to that queue, say inquiry or support or any email, so it's just a queue for support ticket. So anytime that email queue, what happens is that a case is created. So usually you have this in all of some of our banking operations. In their website, they say, okay, if you want if you have any issues, contact us at this email. So usually what is created into that email, which is the queue, is what we call the ARC, which is the automatic record creation. So in here, the ARC sits inside the queue. Once the email drops into the queue, it goes through the ARC. It only does a check. It checks if there is an existing ARC in that queue. If there is an existing queue and that email meets the trigger criteria of that ARC, then the ARC fires. Once the ARC fires, what it does is that there is an action, which I'm going to show you in due course. There is an action specified in that ARC that says, okay, once this email meets this criteria, do this, which is create case in our case, in this scenario right now. So this is what happens. Let's say we have I'm gonna show you like a rule, though it's in draft state right now. But this is, let's say the name of the rule is training rule, okay? And we can just give it a name. Now the second one is the queue to monitor. Now, like I said earlier, we have like adetayo at gg.com. Let's say that is the email address that the support guys can send email to, or the users can send email to. All right. So what you define as, which is a mailbox. So you have to create that queue as a mailbox. Okay. So once you've specified, you've picked the mailbox here, you have to specify, okay, let's do one thing. We're just going to have to create new. I think that will make it better for us to understand. So let's say this is our ARC for today. Let's say 10, ARC 10. All right. So we can, look into this is a lookup for the queue. So we can always look up this queue must be active, and you must always know that this queue must be configured. Okay. So we're just gonna look at all of the queues that we have here. Just 1 second. Say this is our queue test ARC. Now the activities to monitor, like I said earlier, we can have an email sent. We can have the users calling on the phone, right? You can call up the support ticket and say this is my issue, then they create a case from her. We could use either of the activities, okay? We could use the email, those are the common ones. We can even use a task from a task to create a case, right? So, but the common ones are usually emails and phone calls, and tags, basically, or a service activity, okay? But let's say ours is an email. So what this queue is going to be waiting for, what this means is that what this ARC is going to be waiting for is going to be waiting for an email. So for every email that enters into this queue, it's going to be waiting to check on them, right? And let's take a look at this, okay? Say this is the activity we want to monitor. Then we can just even save here. Let's say save. So once this is saved, then we will be able to do other stuff. Now we can define our conditions. Now the step 2 is what? Conditions to evaluate and actions to take. First one is, like I said earlier, there is a trigger. There must be a trigger coming from the email that is going to activate that particular ARC. So let's say the condition, let's define our condition and say, the way we have queues, we can have level 1, level 2, we can have support, we can have help desk, we can have technical tickets, we can have maybe inquiries, or depending on whichever one we want to trigger from here. So let's say our condition name is um, inquiry condition. All right. So in here, we can say the condition that must pass before this actually continues. So let's say the condition is the subject. We could just say the subject, right, which is the subject of the email. Now, everything we're doing here is regarding the email activity itself. So we can just say the subject. You can see the subject, which is the subject field here, must contain, right? It must contain, let's say it must contain inquiry. All right. So if this contains inquiry, this is when this ARC will trigger. All right. It could be, let's say we want to set up some critical issues, and for you to distinguish between lower priority cases and higher priority cases, you can create like 2 3 queues to say critical queue, or lower priority queue, and you can define the condition here to say if the email contains critical, or like priority 1 or something. You can define the conditions here. You could even move the case to that queue first before the case is even been created. All right. So once the case is created, then you add a routing rule to it to add it to, let's say, a more critical queue. For that case, let's say this is our condition: subject must contain inquiry. Then the next thing is to define the actions to take. All right. Now, not necessarily must you create a case. You can actually create another activity. You can create maybe another entity. You can create, say, a task from an email. You can create, say, a case. You can create a work order. A lot of things you can create, because this ARC, which is the automatic record creation, cuts across quite a number of entities as well. So let's say we are creating our cases, okay? So we can just say case here, and what do? We just save it, okay? Let's save it. Once this is saved, right, you can see that we already have our condition here. There is also an option here where you can also add some properties to this case record. You can see here now that what we're trying to create a case. But another thing is that we can actually define some more properties for this particular case record, okay? And we can do that in Power Automate, all right? You can set, say, a condition to route the case, or to set some default fields or default values, or, customize that particular case record. We can do that here. But once this is done here, we can come back here and close this one, okay? And if you do just the subgrid refreshes now, we have our rule here all set up. Okay, so the third step is additional action to take after matching with a condition. So if this email matches with a condition, what should happen? Which is, after a case is created, what should happen? Do you want an automatic reply to the email to say, hey, customer, we have received your email. A case has been created. Give them the case ID. A case ID 1234 has been created. Don't worry, an engineer will contact you shortly. Basically, that's a logical thing to do. So we can say automatically reply to email. You can define yes, and you select your email template. All right. So usually there would be an email template that must have been created, all right, which you could just come here to select. But if you don't want to do that, a quick way you can do that is just to go to your personalization settings, all right. That is taking some time to load. Just 1 second, guys. We could just refresh this. 1 second. Okay, we could try to come here again. Quite some delay about that, but I will show you guys soon. So we could just come here and select our email template, right? We could just come straight down. Let's assume we email template, an automatic response to an email. We could template and just create some dynamic values inside that template to say, okay, I customer case so has been created, and we just select it. Once we change this to yes, it gives us this option, right? Then we can select our email template, right? If we have anyone, we have some out of the box one, but these are basically the ones I've used in some of my testing earlier, but we could use some of them, case auto response, right? We could just use this default, right? Then we can save it as well. Okay, good. Once this is saved, all right, there is also a tab here where we could define some of the properties here. Okay, one of the common settings that we have in this ARC is usually like, okay, do you want to allow emails from unknown senders? All right, who do we call unknown senders? We have in the system, we have accounts, we have contacts, contacts relating to a particular company or account, right? And they can send us emails. So once they send us email, because they exist in the system recognizes we're sending us email. But what if these guys do not even, exist in the system yet? All right. So do we want the ARC or the system to recognize such emails and still pass that same email into the queue? Usually we can put this as yes. All right. If we want to be open, all right, we can put it as yes. And there is also a setting here that says, do you want to, for the unknown senders definitely don't exist in your system yet? Do you want to create a contact, with them so that they will now become known in the system in case there's another time after that? All right. You could create what? You could create a new contact automatically, or you could map them to an existing contact in the system using the Power Automate. All right. These are very cool features that I want you guys to check, after the class and try to play around how this actually works out in Power Automate. All right. So I'm going to set this on as no. And the other one is, do you require a valid entitlement on the connected case? We're going to get to sometimes later in the class when I'm going to talk about entitlements. It was initially called contract, but that was deprecated. And what we have now is entitlement. All right. This is where you define the set of rules, like an agreement between the two parties, which is you helping the customer with the issues and the customer raising the ticket to you. All right. So also the last option here is wait for a specific amount of time after the connected case is closed. Okay, so there is usually this scenario whereby you've resolved the case, you've done your troubleshooting, given the customer some resolution, and you need to allow some time before you proceed and close the case. All right, did you want to wait some time after the connected case has been resolved? So you can choose whether when an email comes in, do you want the case to be reactivated, or do you want the case to remain closed? And once that email comes in again, you want it to create a new one. These are settings that you can have here. You can always go through all of these definitions. It's actually a very broad range, and you can use them to customize depending on your business requirement. Okay, so this is how to create an ARC. Once this is done, what you only need to do is to activate the rule. As you can see here, I'm activating this ARC rule. And once this is activated, any email that comes in from my users or my customers into this support queue, it's going to do what it's going to do. If it actually fulfills the condition I have specified in my ARC rule, what happens? It triggers the ARC and a case will be automatically created. Now, this whole process happens what? Within seconds. It took us time in creating it, but once the email drops in the queue, within a twinkling of an eye, you would see a case will be associated to that email and everything will be created. You can see the ARC record is active now. You can also deactivate it to make any edit. If you want to edit anything here on this record, you can always deactivate the rule first, edit whatever you need, and reactivate back. All right. So this is how to create an ARC rule. Once this is created, your emails comes in and cases are created. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Now, we talked about the case lifecycle, which comes about, either from, other channels. There is a product from Microsoft, which is the omni-channel for customer service as well, in which you can configure a lot of channels where you can give, get feedback from your customers via Twitter, via Facebook, from emails and all of that. All right. These are the channels in which you can get a case or you can get comments or tickets from your customers. And when they come in as an activity via email, phone call, tax, or service activity, it goes through the record creation just like I've just described now. And once they are created, you can create either of these tables. Either you're creating the case, you're creating a note, you're creating a contact, you're creating a knowledge article, whichever one you're creating. So this is the case. And once this is created, it gets assigned to a user or a customer service rep, treats the issue, resolve the case, and the customer is happy. Okay, next slide, please. Now, like we said, creating and routing cases. We've been able to talk about creating cases. The other one is about routing cases. Now, a routing rule, it contains a set of conditions or conditions and actions that needs to be fulfilled in a case management. Like I mentioned earlier, when say you have some critical issues and you have some low priority issues, you can actually differentiate these handling into two by saying we have two types of queues, right? We have the critical queue and we have the lower priority queue. Now, if a case is created, how do you differentiate? How do you say this is a critical issue and needs to be routed to the critical queue? How do you say this is a lower priority case and needs to be routed to the lower priority queue? Now, that is what routing rule does. Is you can have different sets of groups of engineers. You can have the critical set of engineers, the engineers working on the critical queues, and we can have another set of engineers. Usually we call them L1, L2, right? L1, the first layer. Then after, if there is an escalation or it requires an additional expertise, you can always route it to another queue, right? Escalate it to a higher queue. Okay, so we're going to get to that in our next demo shortly. Also, I showed you about the dashboard where we can have a quick glance of cases submitted, resolve time, and these are interactive dashboards you can have here as well. Okay, so here talks about the basic case management theory. It talks about case resolution using the knowledge base. Now, there is a very, very important feature which I'm just quickly going to show you guys right now, which is the knowledge article. One of the things that helps faster resolution of issues is if there is a knowledge base. And what do I mean by a knowledge base? Is just a set of issues, documented. Let's say we call them quick issues, or a quick glance at some issues. Right? You keep a knowledge base of common issues that comes where a customer raises at some time. You have the resolution tagged to them, so you can just quickly associate it. Once, let's say, you have some keywords associated to them, you can use it to search through your knowledge base, and once there is a result from there, read onto that resolution and provide answers to the customer instead of you going out to troubleshoot and check all the necessary things. This buys you more time and all of that. So how let's go into the knowledge article area. If you look at this side here, back to the service site map here, you can see the knowledge articles here. You can have the knowledge articles where you can create a knowledge article and say, hey guys, this is a knowledge article. So I have like two here. One is published and one is in draft. All right. So you can say, let's say, uh, the test with Microsoft. You can see the current status is in draft. So how do you create a knowledge article? You can say, hey, let's just click on new. You can give this name and say resolving failed transaction. All right. So let's say that is the title. And we can put some keywords and say failed transaction. All right. It could be you could also add say cash retracts. Let's just say I'm using an instance of a bank now, but that's not an issue. You can give it a description here. So you can put the content here and say content on how to resolve issues, content on how to resolve failed transaction. Right? You can create this. Once let's say this contains our title, just for example, contains our description and our resolution. Okay, you can as well save this. So once this is done, you can just click on save. All right, you can see there's a business process flow here, which is just telling you is there a subject for it. Then you need to give it a subject. So which subject that is going to be a service or a maintenance or a query. But let's put it under information. Then we can go to the next stage. Okay, let's mark it complete. All right, so the review, we can say it's approved now. Yes, we want to approve it. Is that you use this button, or usually there is usually an approve button on this area if it is not approved yet. So once this is done, the last stage will be to publish the knowledge article. One thing that is very important here is that for you to have this knowledge article visible for sharing or visible for location so that you can search from it from a case and search through knowledge articles, for that particular knowledge article to be visible, it needs to be published. Okay. So we can put here mark as complete and set expiry date as well. We can set expiry date of the of the knowledge article. Maybe this is an information that only valid, that is only valid for some time. Okay, so we can just set this to say till the end of the year. Let's say it's about a promo, and it's only valid till the end of the year. So you can just set the knowledge article to here, and you can finish it. All right. So if you look at it, our status reason is going to bring up the publish button. So when are we publishing? We're publishing in the future or we're publishing now? We're publishing now. And the expiry date, you can see it's here. This expired date is going to be expired by the time the expiry date gets to that date. So publish approved related translations with the article? No. So we're just publishing just one translation here. So once this is done, we click on publish and look at the status of my knowledge article. It's published. Okay, so this is how to create a knowledge article. And by the time you go to a case, right, you can always reference, say we have a case that talks about failed translations, and you as usually used by the customer service rep, they could quickly go into the knowledge article and give a quick check and check here, just on the right hand panel here, you can see here we have recent cases for this particular customer. You can see these are the cases raised by this customer. The other one could be knowledge, and this is the knowledge article. So in here you could do it if there's a related knowledge article that has the same case title and subject with what we have created. You would see there will be some matches here, which is, you can see there's a knowledge article with my name on it, and you can see because it matches with what we have here, you can always click on it and read whatever description you have in this particular knowledge article. Here it could be a YouTube link on how to do something within and as well. So this is how knowledge article attaches with with the case records itself. Okay, good. So let's go back to our slide here. Now, I've discussed with us when we talk about the business process flow that we have in case management, right? On the case itself, I think in our first class, I actually mentioned what a business process flow does. Okay, it provides us with a guide. It gives you a step-by-step guide. In which you have to follow in order to get a particular task done or a particular action completed. Let's say you are going from point A to point B. Or let's say you're going from point A to point E now. You can have to go from A to B, from B to C, C to D, M to E. Or you could go from A to C, C to D, D back to B before going to E. Either way, the business might have customized their actions and activities. The business process flow is going to guide you on the next step to get to the result that you want. All right, so here we have the business process flow, and for the case record, we call the business process flow here phone to case record. Okay, so you can have the business process for which you start. The first level is the identify, which is where you identify the customer that has raised the issue, the contact. If there's any related case, you do some research on the research stage, and that is where you check the knowledge articles. You check if there is any related case to that case that has been solved in the past, and to the result stage. This is where you call the customer and you give them the solution and they give you a confirmation case result. And this is how the business process flow works. Okay. Now, that takes us to the next topic here, which is the service level agreement. Like I mentioned earlier, there are some set of agreements that must have been reached between the two parties, which is the customer and the company providing the support service. Okay, so usually this will be agreed within the entitlement, but the service level agreement only defines your terms of working. Okay, so you can define within the contract to say, for if I raise a severity B case, say for example, I want the SLA, which is probably the contact period, to be 2 hours. If I raise a very critical issue, say I put it on a priority one, then what are you saying? I want the contact to be 30 minutes. So depending on which of the agreements reached between the two parties, this is where we define all of these agreements within the SLA here. Okay, good. So Dynamics 365 customer service helps organizations to manage, track, and enforce these promises by the two mechanisms, which is the service level agreement and the entitlement. Now, like I said, SLA helps you to meet the desired service level when providing support to customers, which allows you to track common KPIs, all right, which is could be the first response by, which is the first time, that's the first contact time in which I raise a case and I know that I'm raising a priority one case. I know we agreed priority one is going to be 30 minutes. Why? That means anytime I raise a priority one case, there's going to be a tag. I'm going to show you that as well. There's going to be a tag here on response by, which is actually a timer that will start counting down from 30. Same agreement with you or with the company is 30 minutes. All right. So once I raise a priority one case, there's going to be a timer on this case that's going to start counting down from the point of creation, which says the engineer or the customer service rep must meet that time or before it expired. That is the agreement. I want the contact before between this particular 30 minutes time. And it could be the resolve timer, resolved by, which means I want my issue resolved within this time period. All right. If it's not going to be resolved, then you need to specify. That means this KPI will be missed. Okay. So these are the two areas in which we can actually measure to every case that is submitted. There is a typical example that has just been shared here, which is like I explained. It could be type of customer, it could be a premium customer or a corporate customer. Or you could put a case priority of high, or it could be a standard customer with no case priority. And the first response, it could be 1 business hour, 1 business day, 4 hours, and depending on the agreement reached between the two parties. Now, what I want us to take note here is this sort of a business process flow, all right, of operations for creating cases, which is the first one here. Once a case is created, right, A case is created, just like I said earlier, it's created with an SLA. Let's say the SLA is 30 minutes. The first response by timer is 30 minutes. Once it's created, the timer starts counting down. Okay. Here, there can be a warning. We can put a warning email to the assigned case owner to say, oh, let's say the warning time starts from when the SLA is as low as 10 minutes or 5 minutes. Then an email goes to that user and says, hey, guy, you have a case with an SLA that is less than 10 minutes, you need to reach out to that customer and make contact to them. You can have something like that. And once the user sees that, oh, it rushes back to the case and like, okay, hi customer, my name is Aditya. I'm going to be the engineer working with you. Please give me some time. Let me review this case. I'll get back to you within the next 15 minutes. All right. So once you send that email out, that means you've been able to meet that particular KPI, which is the first response. All right. So once that is done, is that you send an email to that customer or you call the customer just to meet the SLA, all right, which is the first response by. Now, once that is resolved, that means that is done. The second one that is still waiting is what? It's a result by KPI, which is after you have sent to the customer that, okay, fine, I'm working on it. I'm going to give you a resolution within the next 1 hour. That means you must have defined your result by to be 1 hour. So once that is done, you start researching, checking knowledge articles, checking related cases, and within that time, you provide a solution. Once a solution is provided, all right. Once a solution is provided, you would need to update the case. All right. You will need to update the case, and if you want the status to be changed, if you want the system to recognize that you've moved from one level to the other, you need to update the status of that case. Now, if you look at this area of our case form, we have priority as normal. We have created on time for the case. We have the status, which is the status of the case. All right. So initially, when the case comes in, it usually comes in with in progress. Okay. Or identifying the issue depending on the status you've defined for your case form. Okay. It could be here, and here means that the action is depending on the user, on the customer service rep, right? Not the customer. So here the timer is still going to keep counting down. Now you can define when this status is, especially the result by timer, is going to be met. When do you want this timer met? When the status goes to waiting for confirmation, or when the status is saying result. So once you put this status away from in progress to let's say waiting for confirmation or result, then that timer stops. So it means you provided solution to the customer and you're just waiting for customers to say, oh yes, our issue is resolved. Thank you. You can close the ticket. All right. So the statuses on these case forms are what defines when that particular KPI will be met. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide, which is what I have explained as well. All right. So the next one is actually the entitlement, which defines the sub details, promise to the customer. In a month, you say, oh, in a month, we're only going to be able to assist you with 30 cases. All right. Let's say you're going to have 30 cases. So as the customer raises tickets, the entitlement will start decreasing. Let's say today they raise 2 tickets, you're going to have what? 28 number of cases left in the entitlement. Let's say they raise 5 the next day, you're going to have that's 5 plus 2, 7. Then you're going to have 23 number of cases left, right? So you can have each of these done in the stuff. So you can check here, say under service management, you can have your entitlement here. How do you create entitlement? So we're just briefly going to do that. So if you click on entitlement here, you can say you can create an entitlement and say new. So if you click on new, you can say entitlement, or you can just say gold entitlement, gold entitlement. We can say a primary customer for this. We can say maybe it's this customer. Say start time is today, and that time, usually 6 months or 1 year, but let's just say 1 year. We should be ending by 2023, say September 30, 2023. Now, restrict based on entitlement terms. You can put this as yes. Do we have an SLA defined for some of these entitlements? We don't have any of them. So the entity type is case because that's what we're dealing with. It could be work order, it could be any other entity type defined within the entitlement terms, right? So here there are two options here. The allocation type. Are we allocating based on the number of cases, or you are allocating number of hours? You know, you could say I'm going to give you 50 hours of support, or you can say I'm going to give you 50 number of cases to raise, so I can help you with, or you say 50 hours of support. So you can use number of cases, and decreasing on, is it when the case is created you want it to decrease, you want the entitlement to reduce, or when the case is resolved? Usually it's usually when the case is created, so you know that you can create more. Okay, so then the total time, this is what you're going to define. Is it 20 you want to give them? Is it 50 you want to give them? You can give them, say, 20 per month, right, for this duration of time, or we can say 50, right? So we're using this particular customer at the test. So we can say, here's our entitlement draft. So once this is created, we can hit on save. So once this is saved, you could wait and let us see the status. You can see the status is still what? It's draft. You need to activate it. All right, good. Let's see. Right, status is active now. So just for a test, let's try to create a case and see. Let's see what happens to our entitlement. Okay, let's say we created a new case and say entitlement test. Forget our customer that we used earlier was a detail at the test. Not sure either of these ones we used, but I can confirm. So let's see. Okay, you need to put the entitlement, which is the gold plan. You see, once I select this customer, there's an entitlement on this particular customer. You can put it here and we can save it. If you go and check this entitlement, you can see just because I have created one ticket now, it's going to keep decreasing. And this is what happens. So as the tickets have been created either manually or automatically, the entitlement is being adjusted, automatically. So at the point when this gets to zero, then the customer will not be able to create, and that is what this setting is going to be. Are you going to restrict the creation of cases based on this entitlement terms? By the time it's zero, then you will say there is no more entitlement. That means you're not going to be able to attach the entitlement to that particular customer. So basically, this is what the entitlement and the SLA is all about. So as a quick knowledge check, you can all look at this together. While working on the case, you added a phone call activity to log a call to you place to the customer. Where on the case record will the phone call activity be displayed? Okay, so quickly, what that is telling you is that you're on a case right now. Let's say we're on a case right now. This is the case record that we performed here, right? This is the case record that we're test. If I call this customer, which is how do I log it on the case? So you can always, it's gonna be, this is it, the timeline area. You can always log and create an email to this customer, log a phone call, log a tax, log a booking session, or if you log a phone call, you can say, I call them, just to meet the SLA or to get the initial description, initial issue description, right? And you can put the phone number you called, let's say for example, and how many minutes was it? No, let's say 15 minutes. Okay, and we can save and close. Once this is done, at what point does it show? You can see this is what we just did here. It's the phone call activity, so it definitely shows on the timeline area of the case. So which field is searched by default to provide knowledge article suggestion? I showed you guys earlier when I did about Aditayo and Adi. All right, so it's what? It's the case title. Okay, so the last one is which of the following items represent a support contract that provides a customer with a specific amount of support hours over a specified period of time? Guys, we just did that. I know you guys can echo it right now. So it's the entitlement. So that's about the knowledge check that we have. And in summary, we have learned the different options available for creating and routing cases, right? I've also explained the knowledge management capabilities, within Dynamics 365 for customer service. We've also examined the case management options that we have enabled in Dynamics 365 for customer service. So I want you guys to go over, you can, in your trial environment for customer service, you can go to trial.dynamics.com. If you don't have a trial environment, you can sign into a trial for customer service. You'll be able to have your put your hands on all of these labs. You can create cases, create knowledge articles, create entitlement and SLAs as well. With automatic record creation, but you might just have to create, enable your mailbox for that as well. So, guys, let's have some time to review these, and I'll see you in the next session. In the next class, we should be looking at the concluding part of the customer service, and we can also start on Dynamics 365 for field service as well. Thank you guys for this session. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next class. Bye bye.